Cup. The International Football Association Board has announced a raft of changes.
But nobody can tell me it didn't look terrible.
For this game, the conditions have become more difficult compared to previous games.
Also, Alan, I don't know what you think, but it's almost unfair, a little bit unfair.
There are World Cup upsets, and then there are moments that make the entire football world stop and ask a different question. Not because of a stunning goal, not because of a controversial referee decision, but because everything surrounding the tournament suddenly feels different. Just days into the 2026 FIFA World Cup, football fans weren't only talking about results. They were talking about protests, player frustrations, impossible travel schedules, commercial priorities, and national teams quietly challenging the way the tournament itself is being run. It wasn't one controversy. It wasn't one country. It wasn't even one decision. Instead, several completely different stories began pointing toward the same uncomfortable reality. The biggest World Cup in history was becoming one of the most difficult World Cups ever staged. So, how did we get here? And why have so many teams and players found themselves pushing back against the very tournament they spent years dreaming of reaching? Let's break down the 5 biggest moments that have turned the opening week of the 2026 World Cup into something nobody expected. The first came from one of football's biggest superstars. Brazil arrived at the tournament carrying enormous expectations. With world-class talent throughout the squad, every match immediately became one of the biggest television events on the planet. Against Morocco, Brazil found themselves under pressure after falling behind early. Then their star forward produced exactly the kind of moment everyone expected. Cutting inside from the left, he curled an excellent finish beyond the goalkeeper to rescue an important draw. Normally, that goal would have dominated every headline. Instead, what happened after it attracted even more attention. At halftime, the player reportedly declined to participate in the mandatory television interview required by tournament media obligations. According to reports, members of Brazil's delegation accepted the possibility of receiving a financial penalty rather than taking part. On the surface, refusing an interview might sound insignificant, but inside modern football, it represents something much larger. The World Cup isn't only a sporting competition, it's also one of the biggest entertainment products in the world. Television rights, sponsorship agreements, advertising windows, and commercial obligations generate enormous revenue. Those obligations also place demands on the players. For years, many footballers have accepted those responsibilities without public resistance. This time, however, one of the game's biggest names appeared willing to say enough is enough. Whether fans agreed with his decision or not, it immediately reignited a conversation that had already been growing before the tournament even kicked off. That conversation centered around player welfare. Before the World Cup began, numerous professional players reportedly supported calls for stronger heat protection measures. Their argument was simple. If athletes are expected to perform at the highest level in extreme temperatures, then recovery breaks should prioritize health rather than television scheduling. Some believed longer cooling breaks, independent medical oversight, and more flexible heat protocols were necessary. The governing body's response satisfied some observers but left others unconvinced. As a result, what looked like one player refusing an interview quickly became symbolic of a broader frustration. It wasn't simply about speaking to television cameras. It was about players questioning where football ends and commercial commitments begin. The second story unfolded entirely on the pitch. Every World Cup creates one result that nobody predicts. This tournament may already have produced its biggest surprise. Spain entered the competition among the favorites. European champions. One of the highest-ranked national teams on Earth. A squad overflowing with technical quality and tournament experience. Standing opposite them was Cape Verde, a nation with a relatively small population competing on football's biggest stage against one of the sport's traditional giants. Almost everyone expected the same outcome: a comfortable Spanish victory. Instead, 90 minutes later, the scoreboard remained unchanged. For Cape Verde, it felt like a victory. For Spain, it felt like 2 points disappearing. But beyond the result itself, the draw highlighted another challenge created by the expanded World Cup. This edition stretches across 3 countries and numerous host cities. That means longer flights, more hotel changes, different climates, changing time zones, constant travel. Preparation becomes far more complicated than previous tournaments. Recovery routines become harder to maintain. Training schedules require constant adjustment. Even the biggest football nations must adapt. For smaller federations operating with fewer resources, those logistical demands become even more significant. Cape Verde's performance, therefore, represented more than disciplined defending. It showed that success at this World Cup requires surviving challenges that begin long before kickoff. Every journey, every relocation, every disrupted recovery session, all of it becomes part of the competition. The third story came from circumstances unlike anything many World Cups have previously experienced. Some national teams have faced unusually complex travel and administrative situations throughout the tournament. Instead of enjoying stable preparation bases close to their matches, certain delegations have dealt with border crossings, changing accommodations, and unexpected logistical complications. Preparing for elite international football is difficult under perfect conditions. Doing so while navigating additional operational challenges demands even greater resilience. Football fans often judge teams only by what happens during 90 minutes. Rarely do they see everything required simply to arrive at the stadium ready to compete. Behind every kickoff lies planning, transportation, recovery, security, scheduling, and countless details invisible to supporters watching from home. When those systems become more complicated, players still have one responsibility: perform, regardless of everything happening around them. The fourth issue wasn't connected to one nation at all. It involved nearly every squad participating in the tournament. Expansion has allowed more countries than ever before to experience the World Cup. For millions of supporters, that's something worth celebrating. New stories, new football cultures, new dreams becoming reality. But every expansion carries consequences. More teams require more stadiums. More venues create greater travel. Greater travel increases fatigue. Longer tournaments place additional physical strain on athletes whose seasons already stretch close to an entire year. Modern football rarely slows down. Club competitions finish, international tournaments begin, then another domestic season starts only weeks later. Players are expected to maintain elite physical levels almost continuously. Many within the game have started asking whether the calendar can continue expanding forever. The debate isn't necessarily about playing football. It's about how much football the human body can realistically absorb. And that discussion appears unlikely to disappear anytime soon. Finally, perhaps the biggest story isn't any individual protest. It's the pattern connecting them all. A player questioning commercial obligations, athletes calling for stronger welfare measures, smaller nations overcoming enormous logistical challenges, teams adapting to unprecedented travel demands, administrative complications affecting tournament preparation. Each story appears different, each developed independently, yet together they reveal something much larger. The 2026 World Cup isn't simply testing which team plays the best football. it's also testing the limits of modern tournament organization. Can football continue becoming bigger every 4 years without creating new problems? Can commercial growth and player welfare remain perfectly balanced? Can expanding opportunities for more nations coexist with increasingly demanding schedules? Those questions don't have easy answers, and perhaps that's exactly why these conversations have become impossible to ignore. Despite every controversy, football continues producing unforgettable moments. Underdogs continue shocking giants. Supporters continue filling stadiums. Players continue creating memories that will last forever. The magic of the World Cup hasn't disappeared, but alongside that magic, another story has emerged. A story about adaptation. A story about modern football's growing demands. And a story about whether the world's biggest sporting event can continue expanding without fundamentally changing the experience for the people who actually play it. Maybe these opening weeks are simply early growing pains, or maybe they're the first signs that international football has reached a turning point. Only time will answer that. But one thing is already clear. This World Cup is being remembered for far more than what happens once the referee blows the whistle. So here's the question. Do you think these issues are temporary challenges that every expanded tournament eventually solves? Or are they warning signs that football's biggest competition is becoming too large for its own good? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.